Coming up on show 946, Apple's self-driving electric car once again makes the news. What's the latest? We'll find out. Plus, on the podcast today, Porsche Taycan in the UK goes to number 1 and the Audi e-tron starts production. More, loads more V3 superchargers for China, and the BMW iX goes cold weather skinny dipping. Well, good morning, good afternoon or good evening, wherever you're listening in the world or watching. Welcome to EV News Daily. My name is Martin Lee and I go through every EV story so you don't have to. Well, Porsche sales for the UK were up 15% compared to the same time last year, and the top model here, you guessed it, the all-electric Taycan. There is an all-electric Macan coming soon too, and Porsche recently updated their roadmap to be 50% plug-in by 2025. You know, as more EVs top the sales charts for each individual car maker, or even overall, it'll just put pressure on those ICE cars. Well, globally, Porsche say that they're on track to produce over 20,000 cars this year. That's not to sell, that's to produce 20,000 cars this year. In order to do that, they'll need to produce about 9,000 cars in the final quarter of the year, what with earlier this year being COVIDed, which would give them an annualised production rate of 36,000 for 2021. Next year we are getting the Taycan Cross Turismo also, which looks stunning. And while we're on the subject of the Taycan / the e-tron GT, because they are similar, the Audi has now entered production. Made in Germany, it's made alongside the Audi R8 for the car that is not a sister car to the Taycan, more like a cousin. But cousins that get on really well, not too well. They're both made on the J1 platform. Order books are opening for the Audi e-tron GT in spring 2021, and if I had the money, it'll be on my driveway instantly. I've had an Audi before, had a TT, long before I got into EVs. Stunning. Love their design language, and it's going to be different, but not too different to the Taycan. It's still going to have all that performance, maybe slightly cheaper because it's from Audi. If it's less than 100,000, I'll be surprised. If the Taycan could do 20,000 cars this year, how many cars can Audi sell of the e-tron GT? I wonder. Interesting that the e-tron can regen at 265 kilowatts. Isn't that crazy? It's got four-wheel steering, charges at 270 kilowatts. The specs on this are just absolutely stunning, blowing so many other things out of the water. The battery on it, not the biggest in the world, more than 90 kilowatt hours. In fact, it's there's so many similarities between the e-tron GT and the Taycan, but one of the differences is the battery size. Only one battery size in the Audi e-tron GT. Taycan, you get a choice of two. It'll do 250 miles of range on WLTP. It's got 590 horsepower, 0 to 62 in 3.5 seconds. It'll do 124 miles in 12 seconds. Top speed of 150. Of course, a lot of these German cars are built for the Autobahn, and it is built around that 800 volt architecture. And whilst bigger isn't always better when it comes to voltage, it means that you can reduce the size of the cabling. It helps with thermal management and things like that. Fast charging, you can get to 80% of the battery in 20 minutes. Now, I don't know about you, maybe it's my age, but if I've been driving for a couple of hours, I want a good 20-minute stop. I want to use the bathrooms first of all and then have a coffee and chill out. I don't want these motorway journeys that I used to do maybe 20 years ago where I'd get in the car and just drive for like 4 or 5 hours straight. I don't want to do that anymore. And you know what? After a couple of hours of driving, you pull in, stick it on charge, 20 minutes later, it's 80% and you're off again for another couple of 100 miles. Just brilliant. Love these cars. Let's talk about headline story today. The Apple self-driving EV is back in the news, and a report that seems to track back lots and lots of reports online today seem to go back to a Digitimes article that once again raised the prospect of Apple's self-driving electric car being on the market by 2025. This is the long-awaited Project Titan. Well, TSMC has been chosen as the manufacturer of the silicon, the self-driving chips. Whether Apple ever builds a car is debatable. The last couple of years have pointed towards them developing the hardware and software to enable self-driving and selling that to other car makers. Another piece of the news yesterday said that Project Titan has recently been moved kind of internally within Apple. It now sits within the management structure of AI and machine learning. not anything to do with making big cars. So maybe this is going to be a software product, or maybe some hardware with it as well. But Apple recently moved into making their own M1 chip for the new MacBook Air, the MacBook Pro 13-inch, what else? Mac Mini, I think, which they say incorporates the latest machine learning on their new. This is their own chip, the first one that they've made. It's called the Neural Engine. Well, they've called it the Neural Engine. And it learns what you're doing within apps. So it can kind of predict what you might want to do to that photo when you're editing it. Maybe it could help speed up me editing this video, which tends to take all day long. If TSMC sounds familiar, not only because they're one of the world's big chip makers, because Tesla is working with them as well for hardware 4. Should be going into mass production for Tesla by the end of next year or the beginning of 2022, which sounds an awful lot to me like a Cybertruck timeline. Now, where is the margin for all of this? Is it building cars? Is it stamping bits of metal? Elon Musk gets very excited about manufacturing, but it looks like the tools for self-driving could be where Apple think the market is. What I don't like from this report, so we'll report on it here, but what I don't like is this report said that the Apple car is similar to Tesla. That was the phrase they used, similar to Tesla. But we didn't think Apple were building a car. We thought they're just building the software and maybe some hardware as well, but not an actual car. It's unclear what that sentence means, and I don't like it when that kind of thing is written because it makes me doubt other things as well. But it's always good to take a check-in on Apple's Project Titan if it ever sees the light of day. Let's talk about what's happening in China. VW is opening a new Chinese R&D centre as a demonstration of how important China is to the future of electric mobility. VW just opened their new R&D centre in Hefei. The newly built facility puts VW's R&D, testing and quality assurance at the heart of one of the world's biggest markets for EVs, much like Elon Musk talking at the Model 3 customer handover event almost a year ago when he was saying about he wants to have a Chinese design team in Shanghai. And this all shows how China is so important, should be taken seriously as a country which is driving innovation in electric vehicles. Now, in a related story, VW has increased their stake in what was a joint venture project, JAC Volkswagen, and they've taken a 75% stake now, renamed it to Volkswagen Anhui Automotive Company, and assumed management control. In the new year, that company will invest, or VW will now invest, in a project to make EVs for the local market, and factory and general assembly lines being upgraded so that the first annualized capacity to roll off that new factory in a couple of years will be 350,000 EVs every year from this one VW factory. Staying in China, as an update to the story last week that I gave you about Tesla's large V3 supercharging station. That one was underground. This one is adding, this story is adding many more to the mix. Plenty more, in fact, in the last 24 hours. 27 newly built supercharging stations, with 23 sites of them being V3 technology. Of course, has a peak charge speed of 250 kilowatts. It's 1,000 miles an hour that you are adding if you can turn up in a car that can take it, which is Model 3, long range, big battery, enough to take that charge speed. And whilst it's impressive, remember that the faster charging enables greater hourly throughput of vehicles. So whilst it's great, we can talk about charge speeds, we all spend less time waiting for our cars. It's more important than that, because it's important to Tesla, because the more cars they can get through a supercharger, the less they have to spend on infrastructure for the same results. The highly dense population areas of which they sell a lot of Teslas in China are the kind of areas where fast charging is essential. Many don't have access to home and workplace charging. By the end of the year, Tesla will have 7,000 charging stalls complete. In the next couple of weeks, that'll be wrapped up. 5,000 of them in China are DC fast chargers, so what you call superchargers. Another 2,000 are the AC destination chargers. Superchargers in China, they're more likely to be in dense population areas, whereas in other countries, sometimes the superchargers are more likely to be out of town or on main transport routes between big towns and cities. Chinese citizens are much more likely to use fast public transport to cover long distances, in a cultural difference to many in the West that like to do road trips in their cars. Just interesting where they place the superchargers differently around the world. Let's talk about Fisker next. Selling a car in a new market is always difficult. That might be one thing, but providing aftercare and service, even deliveries, is another. In the UK, Fisker just signed a deal with two companies, Cox Automotive and Rivus, R-I-V-U-S, to provide after-sales and service. Rather than building their own network of service centres, they're outsourcing delivery, service, maintenance, fleet management, like mobile servicing, valuation, trade-in of cars and refurbishment and remarketing. Fisker are going about business in a way that keeps them really light on assets. Magna in Austria are building, even co-developing their first car, the Ocean SUV. I love the design of it. And it's a 7-seater as well. It's going to be, if they get it to the right people at the right price, could be very popular. Fisker will have a consumer experience centre opening in many large global cities in 2021. It starts that rollout. So you will be able to go and see the cars in big cities. The UK has had more attention recently because of our 2030 deadline for banning combustion engines, although plug-ins and even hybrids that can go a significant distance did get a reprieve of 5 years till 2035, but we don't know what significant distance means. It wasn't defined. Well, EVs require specialist training to work on, and those are two companies that I've just mentioned that Fisker have signed with. They've already got a head start on training their mechanics and their engineers to work on EVs. Now, the Ocean SUV goes on sale in the US in 2022. It goes on sale here in the UK 2023. That's amazing. Only a year after the US, and we're not a massive car market by any means. Okay, moving on. Let's talk VW. The ID4, first Max, has had some reviews. I picked up Autocar magazine, had a flick through. They've taken the VW ID4 for their first test drive and review. Of course, this is the first global model based on the ID or the MEB platform. ID3 is not coming to the US. ID4 is made in Germany for now, but it'll be made in Europe, China, and in the US at Chattanooga, where they're making the batteries as well. Here, the first customers are going to be getting it in February 2021. US customers should have the ID4 before Christmas, but I'm hearing of a short delay. If you know any more, leave a comment below and let me know if maybe you're one of those waiting for the cars. The first ID4s are rear-wheel drive. Next summer, we get all-wheel drive GTX models. They say the car is the size of a Tiguan on the outside, but you get the room of a Touareg on the inside. So maybe they should call this the ID TARDIS. Autocar drove the first Max version. That's the one with 201 horsepower, 77 kilowatt hour usable, 324 miles WLTP, I think I remember, 125 kilowatt charging, all very solid. By the way, that fast charge speed, you do have to pick from the options list, otherwise it'll just charge at 50 kilowatts. I hate that. I really hate that. Charging speed, the ability to charge fast, if your car can do it, it should be able to. It shouldn't be buried in an options list, because somebody will look at that and be like, how much? For what? No, I don't need that. And then you're buying a used car in a couple of years' time, and you're saying to the person you're buying it off, has it got, or even worse, you go to an auction, you can't inspect that kind of level of detail. Has it got the upgraded fast charging? Is it going to be a 50 kilowatt slow charging car or 125 kilowatt fast charging? Do they option it? It shouldn't be on the options list. Put everything else on there, the carpets, the mats, the colour of the seats, the leather, etc. But not something as fundamental as how quickly the car charges. But of course VW are doing that to make sure that the base models are, even like with a suspension, you can spec, I'm not sure it's adaptive suspension. All those kind of things you can spec, that's fine. That's all fine. But don't muck about with the charge speed and get more money out of people's wallets to make it charge quicker. If your car can do it, it should just be able to do it. Now, I still can't order one. So before I came to record the show, went to VW UK. It just says sign up to get emails. Cars are being delivered in February. Has anyone bought one yet? How do I buy one? I'd like to spec one. I'd like to go through the configurator. I don't seem to be able to. Finally, a BMW iX is being seen cold weather testing, and that's good news because it means that that prototype is working its way through the system. About a year away, actually, I think, from the iX being on sale. They're currently doing some Scandinavian testing, cold weather abilities, driving way beyond the Arctic Circle to find the real extreme conditions to test the drive and suspension systems, the electric motors, four-wheel drive, charging technology, the high voltage battery or traction battery as you sometimes hear it called, heat management, all under the acid test of sub-zero temperatures. The iX uses BMW's 5th generation technology. You'll find it in the iX3 as well. And the forthcoming iNext, it's all-wheel drive, it's 500 horsepower, it is 600 kilometers, about 373 miles. They're aiming for an efficiency of 210 watt-hours per kilometer. That's the plan. Another year to go, and the iX will be on the market. And that's your show for today. Well, thank you very much for watching the YouTube version of this. I do appreciate it. Keep your feedback coming in below. This is new. I'm only a week into turning the camera on, so still lots to learn, lots of things we can make better, but a ton of feedback. I really appreciate all the help that I've been given. Patrons as well, for my Patreon page, have been letting me know what we can do differently and helping out. So thank you very much. Keep the comments coming in below. Chip in with what you think about the stories today. I'd like to learn from you as well. I just love this community that we're in with electric vehicles. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next one. Goodbye, bye.